The next session we discuss our content strategy. I'm very happy that at this session we talk about a lot about content innovation actually. So we speak about business models that really apply this ecosystem of Google. I'm very happy that we have two very innovative companies there. We have two other panelists who will give feedback from established media and are very innovative. And we have again, a great friend of DLD and a great moderator of DLD and an evangelist of all what is digital content and digital content ecosystem. Jarvis with us. Jeff is a long-term expert in media. He was a journalist. He was in digital media. He recently, over the last 3 years, created the journalism program, the new journalism program at CUNY School in New York, where he does incredible workshops on entrepreneurial new ways into journalism and business models. And obviously he's also the author of the book, What Would Google Do? Who knows the book, What Would Google Do? So Jeff, you have your base here, so expectations are high right now. And the last panel is also very strong. Floor is to you to introduce now our panelists and to have a very good discussion. Thank you.
Remind me never to follow Google. I should go there. We have a very good panel here on the future of media. It was a year ago, the panel here, I was sitting down there, that Dr. Berger stood up. You've heard this quoted many times today, talk about the lousy pennies digital. I hope that today, what we'll talk about instead is creating content with wonderful pennies, because it can be much cheaper. Finding new pennies in targeting and new structure and how we deal with the public. So pennies may not all be lousy anymore if you get enough of them added up and don't spend too many of them. So today we have a panel of people who are doing some amazing things. We're going to talk about many models of content. There's also other people here in the room. I don't know if Samir Aurora is here from Glam. There are companies like that have new models as well. And I want to have a discussion with all of you beginning quickly. I'll pardon myself for using my laptop, but I lost my paper and pen, and I'm accused of not liking paper anyway, so that's gone. We have on our panel here Shawn Colo from Demand Media, which you'll hear described in a few minutes, which is a very innovative model for creating content. Next, we have Peter Berger from Suite 101, which is a board investment, which preceded Demand Media and operates in a slightly different model. Compare and contrast those. Then we have Gregor Vogeslang, who's the author of Customer Centricity, Die neue Chance für die Medienindustrie, which is his argument there. And is a Bruce. And then we have Roussei from the Telegraph, who's in charge of digital there, who's doing a lot of interesting new things. So why don't we start with Shawn, and Shawn's going to show a very few slides to describe and explain how demand works, because it's a bit of a model that's going to bend your brain about how content works.
First of all, we'd love to follow Google. We follow them all around the internet and get a lot of information based on the data that they give us and what people are searching for. But so we've got a couple of slides. It's literally 3 or 4, so I'm not going to bore you with the commercial about demand. But our goal is effectively fairly simple. We want to publish the information that the world wants to know and share. We think our business model is actually quite simple also. Effectively, we do what a lot of traditional media companies do. We create content, we distribute it, and we monetize it. Of course, it's not that simple to execute on a model that has global ambitions and spans multiple categories. So in order to do that, we've raised a fair amount of capital. We've raised $355 million in private equity. We have used that capital wisely to make acquisitions as well as develop products. And we've really assembled a world-class team of internet experts led by Richard Rosenblatt, who some of you may know. He's the chairman of MySpace, and has really been living and breathing social media his entire career. So I'm just going to take you through the content creation process. This is part of the business that's been getting a lot of people's attention lately. What we have created is a professional, qualified network of freelancers. Today we've got about 7,000 or so creators in the network. And it's a directed network, which basically means that we don't let people just come in and create anything they want. We tell them what to create. And the way we're able to do that is effectively using a lot of science and a lot of data, a lot of search data, to effectively determine whether or not a piece of content can whether there's audience demand, and whether we can monetize it with advertising. So that is a very unique part of our business. It's not the whole story. We are also in the distribution business. We own and operate our own network of websites. These are brands like eHow, livestrong.com, trails.com. This network today reaches over 100 million unique users a month. I think the slide's got 90. We also deliver content to partners and really spend some time thinking about off-network distribution. We are the largest provider of video content today to YouTube. And lastly, from a business perspective, we're focused on making money. We sell branded display advertising. We work with a lot of large partners who are to integrate that as part of the experience. We do rely heavily on performance marketing. We rely a lot on Google and Yahoo and data. And especially add just a lot of market intelligence to that process. You can really juice the revenue and really create economies of scale and great efficiency. eHow is a site that we acquired a couple of years ago. It was generating about 4 million unique visitors per month. Today it's approaching 60 million. Livestrong.com is a leader in the health, wellness, and fitness category. This is a brand that we developed from scratch. So this is not something we acquired. We developed it with Lance Armstrong and the foundation. And you can see that the numbers are up to the right on Livestrong. Cracked.com in the comedy vertical, again, sort of an emerging leader. And lastly, Expert Village, which is a brand that we use on YouTube, and you can see that the number of streams continues to grow. There's a little bit of a dip in the chart because we started experimenting with some different formats, and YouTube started experimenting with some different...
And I think this is the newer part, is listening to the audience in new ways to give the audience what the audience wants. I used to consult for About.com, because they're a creature of Google. They get 80% of their traffic from Google. The writers there all constantly look at the search requests coming in from Google. When they find questions that people are asking for which they don't have an answer, they write the answer. We in big old media tended to ask both the questions and the answers, because we couldn't hear. Now we can hear. So demand took that to a new level, by not just doing it manually, but by having the algorithm look for those things, but have the greatest demand, that also have the greatest monetary potential, and you spit out, the algorithm puts out a headline, it's then fixed by an editor, and then someone writes that piece, and it goes up, and it gets Google juice. True?
Yes.
Okay. So those are two key insights here, that I think are very important to discuss as to where this goes, and we'll come back to both in a moment. But one other thing before I let you go, is that the other thing that people fear about demand, that I've heard is, it's a content farm, and it's going to fill the internet with crap. To which you said?
Well, as I tried to articulate, we're in the business of creating and engaging consumer experiences. And it's hard to separate the distribution piece from the creation piece. So every piece of content that we create has to live somewhere. And if it's crap, the users are going to certainly register that immediately. If it's crap, the advertisers are going to hate it. And people are going to stop coming back to our websites. So we have every incentive to create super high quality content. Because we want to grow traffic, we want to engage the audience, and we value our consumers, and we value what the advertisers are doing.
So quality matters. Indeed, About.com, when they got rid of a low-performing writer and replaced it with a better writer, better quality, better traffic, better revenue. So, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we've got a system where you need to apply to get in to create the content. So this is not an open platform where you can just show up and write whatever you want. I mean, you've got to be qualified, you've got to be professional, you've got to submit a writing sample and a resume. So we are very focused on quality. So I just sort of take umbrage with that.
So that's fine. You're allowed to take umbrage.
Umbrage taken.
You get your chance to respond to it. The other thing I think, real quickly, is to say that in a world of overabundant content creation, value may shift to the curator. Right? Clay Shirky at NYU, quoted earlier, says our problem is not too much information, it is filter failure. So there's value in filtering, aka editing, which Edward's going to do, you folks don't really quite do as much in the sense of selecting stuff from the web. Let me move to Peter now. Peter has, your company has a similar model in the sense that it's lumped together, but it's actually very different in the sense that you're not assigning pieces out of an algorithm. You have writers who want to write things and you help do it. Why don't you explain your model real quick?
Yes, V101 is a scalable network, a platform for writers who we help achieve their goals, which can be revenue generation, it can be traffic, it can be simply writing about what they always wanted to write about. From the outside, this sometimes superficially might look similar to the Rans model, particularly eHow. Also in terms of scale, we are currently at 24 million uniques a month, and currently roughly doubling that every year. So going quite strongly for our riders. But what we do differently is that we focus completely on quality. We only work with people who meet audit standards. Currently, it's at roughly 20% of applying persons.
You know, the balance of power has not only changed between advertisers and consumers, it has decisively changed between the media and consumers. And as you just said, go back to the product, go back to the question of how do I make that product matter to consumers, i.e. the media product, the content product. And that, in my view, means to do this in three dimensions: relevance, quality, and trustworthiness. And I think that is where the media industry is challenged, how to make the product more customer-centric along those three dimensions, and also in areas that really matter to people. My home, my kids, my job, my health, that kind of stuff. And if you look at it, actually the media has contributed a lot in the past years to devalue its product. In a study that we did last year, we could show that if you take 100% of the reach of the magazine industry in Germany, only 12% is actually still paid copy sales at the newsstand. And that share is shrinking. So the devaluation of the media product is a real issue. And obviously, I mean, not having really looked into it deeply enough, but I mean, mechanisms like demand media could change that balance and actually could make the product again more relevant as it marries relevance and quality. And I think this is the key thing.
Can relevance and quality bring higher value and thus higher revenue?
Well, that still needs to be seen. I mean, we all know that, and I still maintain that monetization in the digital space is significantly lower than we have it in the offline space. And I think that will not be changed by demand media, but the share that you can obviously get through mechanisms like demand media is bigger. So it's a competitive mechanism, I think, and it is a mechanism that helps media players to marry quality and relevance and therefore make the media product matter again to consumers.
Edward Roussei of The Telegraph is a friend of mine who gave me a story that I eat out on all the time, that The Telegraph is a leading retailer of clothes hangers in the UK. My theory, by the way, is because The Telegraph is conservative, its readers like to have their suits neatly pressed. I write for the competitive Guardian, which is liberal, and we throw our blue jeans in the corner and don't care for wrinkle. Edward, among many things at The Telegraph, is finding new business opportunities, new revenue opportunities in new content areas where you know you're going to get the revenue because you know there's demand. Talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, first of all, can I just give a helpful warning to the idea that algorithms can help you determine what people want. I worked for 11 years for Mike Bloomberg, and I remember somebody asking me the question, how do you develop products that people want? He said, well, I don't, I need to know what they want, so I develop products and I ram it down their throats. So there's a lot to be said for having people who've got the judgment to handicap what it is that their readers want. And there's a second part to that help warning. The biggest success by far that we've had as a media group recently has been, there's a major scoop that we had in the 6-week period last year relating to the expenses of members of parliament in the UK. And over a 6-week period we published for every single person, every 646 MPs, their expenses. And it meant that for a 6-week period we dominated the news agenda, both online and via the newspapers. And of course that's a good example of content that our readers didn't know that they needed, but they were pretty glad when we provided it to them. Having said all of that, I agree with my kind of panacea that as a companies we need to be far more mindful about what readers are looking for. And it's really about the dynamic that combines three things. I call them the 3 C's. It's your content, it's your commerce, and it's your communities or your clubs. And a lot of what we're working on now, involving our digital vision, is understanding that we don't want to be dependent on any single revenue stream. That we're interested in the advertising that comes from content. We're also interested in the commerce, thanks to your hangers, and the 5,000 pairs of shoes we sold last year, and the 4,000 pairs of slippers that we sold, which I've got more in the back end.
Don't forget the Panama hats.
Indeed, and the Panama hats and the $1 million worth of integrations. So developing commerce and communities, the club-based model, is also very important to us.
You also have sports betting as a revenue stream, which American publishers are very jealous of.
Yeah, so sports betting, which fits in very well with another of our clubs, which is Fantasy Football, which is a subscription service. 170,000 people pay to take part.
So these are, I think, bigger changes than we even realize. Dr. Berger said yesterday that Focus Online is making money from commerce more than from advertising. You are making money from commerce and things like that. That makes me wonder at some point whether or not the media company becomes a retailer, which, by the way, has an impact on whether you want to put up paywalls. Do stores put up paywalls? We'll get to that. At the same time, I think we see media companies that are becoming retailers. I see Best Buy in the audience, who are becoming media companies. And they have a role in this. And that's a new model. We can supply them to the company. So keeping score here, we have new, less expensive ways to create content, new ways to listen to the audience and what they want, new ways to find new revenue through commerce and clubs. I want to mention one more model, which is GLAM. Anyone from GLAM here? They're all working. That's good for you, Dr. Berger. They're a network model. They grew to be the largest women's brand online with 110 million uniques, not by owning and creating content, but by creating networks that enable things. One more note. At my university, we did a study in new business models for news, and we researched hyperlocal blogs in the U.S. We found some who were covering towns of 50,000 people who were bringing in $200,000 revenue a year. Not wealth, but a living. That's important. So these are new ways you can cooperate with those people and create content. So, is that a list of the models so far?
I think a lot of the discussion goes in the direction of creating very cheap content, and I think that cannot be the only goal. I think actually, I know because we pay a few of our writers for individual articles thousands and thousands of dollars. That's for individual articles because we work under a revenue share model. So there's actually a lot of success possible in our models, and I know that you guys know that as well because you can focus on the particularly commercial niche. The people who grasp the opportunities right now that exist there, they don't have to live on pennies. There's a lot of new tools and opportunities out there, and you can make quite a bit of money, but you have to forget quite a bit of what you have operated under before.
I think the only thing I would add is that neither of us are claiming to be in the investigative journalism business. I mean, that is clearly something that creates value.
So could your model work with news?
Theoretically, yes. But practically speaking, I think it would be very challenging. I mean, I don't see us really putting people on the ground in Haiti, for example, okay? But when you talk about innovation, you know, we're not blind to the fact that we need to innovate at the product level. We really want to be an innovative company. And it's kind of interesting to hear you say you're kind of getting into the retail business, right? In some way, commerce business. And it's sort of it's kind of an interesting thing to debate whether a newspaper company or media company should be necessarily in the retail business. We're focused on innovation at the product level and delivering those experiences to consumers, because that's the thing that's changed about the media business. The way people consume content today is so very different than it used to be.
I think that media companies actually need to spend more on certain parts of their content, which is sort of the brand-defining core that they have, right? I mean, I think top-quality journalism will not cost less, it will cost more to differentiate in a world of abundant content. The thing with the mechanism that yours sort of having here is it helps you to lower the costs on the 80 or 70% of the content that I also need to have, which are ways of really differentiating in a sense. It's service journalism, right? And that's I think is the important message here, that I can shift. Today I spend more or less on my editorial team and various ways of content. I can shift money to the brand-defining core of my content and actually do the rest in a much more cost-effective way.
Exactly.
This is the key mechanism we're talking about here. Also, to note, I mean, for those who don't have that brand-defining content core, this model will be dangerous because it lowers the barrier to entry in any way.
Well, the web does that. We're all publishers. Okay? No. We're all publishers now, so we're all that barrier. I guess the problem becomes if you're a journalist making your living full time and you see someone coming along getting paid, whether it's service or not, $20 per article, that is frightening. if you see a company shrinking down in size, whether you're a journalist or a press operator or a driver, that's frightening. It is frightening, period. But we're in a completely new structure of the economy, and I think that's the issue we have to deal with. So the cost issue is not just, oh, they make cheap content. The cost issue for our industry is that we, shall I say, waste money on repetition and things like that. So there's an efficiency side. The discussion so much about this has been about those revenue lines. We've got to talk about the cost lines of the industry too. I want to yell out, are there other models, new models that you've heard about, any of you out there, that we've not talked about so far, that are promising new models for content? Robert, you must know one. What? Anybody? Yes, yell it out.
Companies like Daylight and Cosmics are creating aggregated content pages.
Thank you for the plug. I'm a partner in Daylight. Well, so aggregation. Aggregation is controversial in some ways. We talked about it in the last session with Dr. Callan and Google. Does aggregation add value? Maybe it does. Any other new models? Anybody? Yes.
Associated content, or Mochila, and generally content.
Associated content, I think, is, would you say it's a somewhat like Sweet 101? No. So why don't you tell them voluntarily what associated content in Mochila is, if you know what it is?
So the question was...
Associated content in Mochila.
Yeah, Mochila is a business model where to increase share of premium content, like premium content. And so it's content that's already in other existing branded papers or classic.
With the way internet is being sailed, because all the time I hear the argument that the internet is cheaper, and this leads to low pricing, which is not fair with the digital world, because you guys deliver a lot of metrics, you guys are very efficient. So I think that there should be a care in branding that efficiency, do you understand? Because otherwise you will never see advertising agents and clients knocking at your door to pay more. So you have to be careful in that kind of branding.
Yeah, I mean, the traditional media companies are being forced to unbundle those sales, right? They can't just include the digital assets now as part of the sale. That's got to stand on its own 2 feet. I think we're going to see CPMs rise significantly over the next couple of years.
Do you guys make money from brand advertising or just search advertising?
Definitely. We make money from brand advertising, and that's also something we'll focus much more on the coming year. But to your point, I really am convinced that with good content, you have not to achieve, you don't have to achieve. You definitely can't make money on content no one wants to reach. And in the past that was only a hidden problem, and now it's very obvious because readers really can vote very efficiently what they read. But yeah, brand advertising does also work for us. But
Rafa. We have social, and then we have Twitter, which I think is beyond social because Bitly, is Bitly here? Oh, well, anyway. Bitly causes 2 billion clicks a month now to sites. Google News causes 1 billion clicks a month to sites. It's not apples to apples, but it shows the power of these new spheres of discovery. Yes, sir. I think you, sir.
Hi, Leon from Uganda. We all know that Google doesn't like the concept of pay-per-post. And how does the user-generated content based on revenue is different from pay-per-post, and why Google like it?
sure, I mean, in terms of pay-per-post, what do you mean exactly?
When people write on
So you all know what pay-per-post is. Pay-per-post, they say they've changed it, they changed the name, but that they would pay bloggers to write about brands in their blogs on behalf of advertisers.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's really, I think, the job of the editorial team, to work with and to identify that. It's something which is by nature and by definition hard for an algorithm to identify. So you have to work with people who actually understand the matter and who can identify that. To establish yourself as a quality brand, a platform where only quality happens, you can't really get around that. And we have definitely people who are trained in that. And that's also, I think, one of the parts of our success and why even old content keeps rising in popularity.
We're over here.
John again. You mentioned earlier about CPMs going up. How do you see the media industry responding to the fact that more brands want to go direct to their end users and become content providers themselves?
I'm going to put you on the spot, Shawn.
So we have
Michelle from Best Buy. Michelle's done brilliant work on social at Best Buy, including those of you who live in America who know 12 force, like 25,000 employees on Twitter answering consumers' questions. That's 25,000, sorry. Exaggerated. But an incredible force to answer people's questions and create a new direct relationship between the brand and the customer around media using a tool. Are you going to need media soon?
Of course we need media, but there are new ways of reaching customers and we're experimenting with new models. This just happens to be what we do every day to answer questions, provide help to our consumers and all the retail outlets. This is one way that Best Buy can pull off answers. We provided 20,000 answers direct from our employees on the badge at 12 Forks, which is phenomenal. So they're opting in, providing answers, and it's an example of that low-cost way of serving and generating demand, serving customers, generating demand.
Well, I think brands becoming media is another major change that we're just watching. In the US, brands are spending 70% of their digital marketing budget to create their own media, private label media. It's a significant effort and change that we see in the landscape. And again, I mean, obviously you're playing a role.
I visited Best Buy, privileged to visit them, and they're a very smart company, and not only creating media in that sense, but also the circular is a form of media, the store itself is media, the relationship with the customer and the proper community becomes media.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's smart. I think Best Buy is way ahead of the curve in terms of thinking about customer acquisition and retention. I mean, those are metrics that media and brands and commerce companies have been focused on for a long time. But those dollars can shift around. I mean, the best form of customer acquisition may in fact be the Q&A sessions that you've got for Best Buy, where you're putting that content out, you're answering people's questions, and now when somebody types a Google search, they get the right answer from an authoritative, trusted source. I mean, that's what search should be.
My name is Ulrike Lange. I'm a freelance journalist. I wonder if you can put some imagination into what I call is the core of journalism, the kind of journalism that doesn't turn up through a product need, through an algorithm, or through e-commerce. What about investigative stories? What Edward Russell said, the kind of need for a story that you don't know you have until it's there, and then you think, okay, that's what I need to know, what I'm really interested in. How can we find some sustainable models for that kind of journalism?
Just on that, I think it's a very important point. You know, our media company is 155 years old, and it was founded in 1855, which was the period when there was a very bitter war, the Crimea War, which was a disastrous war for the British. And there was enormous demand at the time for news you could trust, because people didn't believe what the government was saying about how our soldiers were having wonderful victories in what is now Russia, and there's enormous demand for news you could trust. Fast forward to last year with our MP's expenses scoop, and in fact, exactly the same issue of trusted news that holds the government to account and the fiscal cost to account was in fact the biggest unbudgeted contribution towards our 2009 revenue. So as we talk about new models, it's worth remembering that what's good about the old models, we sold an additional 2 million newspapers as a result of that scoop. We created 30 million page impressions we wouldn't otherwise have had. We created a special supplement in a book. So some parts of the old model are very good, but an awful lot of it isn't. So to your point on investigative journalism, I think that the investigative journalism still has enormous value. And when you get a great scoop, it can be important for publishing.
I would technically agree, right? What doesn't work anymore is reprinting the news. But what we see with, for instance, the news magazines in the US moving away from, the closeness to news to the online medium, agenda setting, background, thinking pieces, that kind of stuff, I think that will continue to be differentiated and actually will still remain in high demand for readers. As you can see with The Economist. I mean, The Economist is actually winning in terms of readers.
I think that investigative journalism, what I tell my students is they have to add value now. They can't just repeat what you already know. You cannot afford to do that anymore. We've got to add value to this marketplace. And we'll see how that works. All right, I think we're nearing the end here, but we started off with lousy pennies. And I hope up here, I think we have wonderful optimism. So how many of you think that the future of content is still lousy? Anybody? No? One. All right, what is it? You're the only one I got to ask you why.
They don't make money. That's what they're
Nobody down. Anybody else? How many think the future of content is promising? How many don't know? That's why they haven't raised their hands. All right, I want to thank our panel.